Hello, my friends. I'm Pittsburgh Pat, and I'm here with Kara Snyder today. How are you today, Kara?
I'm doing well, thanks.
That's fantastic. So Kara is a painter, as you can see in the background there. She's got one of her abstract paintings there. She's a dog lover and also an eternal deadhead. Eternal deadhead, huh? Well, if you plant ice, you're going to reap the wind, right?
That's right.
You're going to harvest the wind. I'm sorry. See, I messed it up. Oh, well. Tell I'm not true
I'm
deadhead.
impressed. Yeah.
I like music, so I have a passing knowledge of the Grateful Dead. But all right, well, we're going to talk about Kara's art, but before we do that, we're going to get to know Kara a little bit and ask her like a speed round here, like we're on a game show. We're going to do some speed round questions. So, Kara, okay, what is the last thing that you ate?
Turkey burger.
Oh, that sounds good. Oh, was it Morningstar Farms or was it
No,
Boca?
bought from like Giant Eagle and cooked on the grill.
Oh, okay, great. And then who's your favorite historical figure?
Definitely Henry David Thoreau.
Oh my gosh, I
Hands
love
down.
Thoreau. We're going to talk about Thoreau for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
What's your favorite movie?
Harold and Maude.
Harold and Maude. Okay. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Time travel.
Time travel. If you could travel in time, where would you go first?
Probably like ancient Greece, like the classics. I'd love to go talk to Plato and Socrates and stuff.
Are you a Stoic?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I'm an Epicure, but I love Stoicism. I believe I'm a very big proponent of Stoicism, but I find it a little dry. So I'm an Epicurean in the classic sense, where I believe the Stoic thing, but I believe that pleasure is desirable. So like
Have you
most
ever
people.
read Marcus Aurelius?
Yeah, I love Marcus Aurelius. He's the
Yeah,
best.
yeah. I just
Yeah.
read his book, like probably over the winter, just to torture myself through COVID a little more.
Actually, I had a Stoic book club. We met every Sunday and we picked a Stoic. I wanted to read the primary source material, but they picked like scholars and we read them, and then we read excerpts of like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius and that sort of thing. Well, that's great. I didn't know that you were into him. I love Marcus Aurelius. I made a pottery ashtray, or candy dish is what my friend used it as, and he put it on his desk. And Marcus Aurelius had one of his meditations was, and he was writing this to himself. So don't take offense to it, but it said, "Quit your whining and get to work."
Oh yeah.
So he had that on his desk. That was one of his morning
That's
meditations.
awesome. I'd buy one of those.
Well, there was only one. Maybe I'll make another one for you. All right. So if you could wake up tomorrow and you have one new ability, what would it be?
Definitely to be able to sing. I can't sing it like at all. I mean, it doesn't sound good. I can sing, but I wouldn't get any audience.
I think that could be taught, though. I think you could learn that.
I took lessons, and then I think the woman gave me my money back and told me
That is fantastic. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, that's great. So we got a lot in common. We got a lot to talk about here. All right. But let's talk about art, because that's why we're here. So when did you know you were an artist? Was this something that started at a very young age?
Sure. Yeah. Like I didn't know they were the pre-workings of an art future, but when I was very little, I used to love, my mother would give me a bucket and a big house painting brush on hot summer days, and she'd say, "Go paint the garage." And we had a garage that was all black with white trim. So when you paint with water on a garage that's black, it turns a much darker black than the original. So I thought I was like really painting. But of course, the sun would dry it instantly. And I remember like being so intrigued with watching the water drip and then dry in the sun and then be able to go back over it again. So I got obsessed with just the process of like textures changing and like all of the physical components of what painting is. That's what I ended up being in love with. So
how old were you at that time?
3, 4.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Really
You still have that as a memory?
Oh yeah, totally.
Oh, that's intense.
Well, because we did it probably, she sent us out there in droves probably until I was probably 8 or 9,
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it was fun. She was a genius, I think.
I think, yeah, parenting genius. There's no doubt about that. That's fantastic. And an inexpensive way to get your kids to occupy their time and learn something too.
Mhm.
We were like all about fluid dynamics and evaporation rates and all kinds of things. You didn't even know you were
Exactly.
studying.
Really bad sunburns. Yeah.
Oh, well, there's that. Yeah. So you gave me a couple of pieces to look at. And I'm fascinated by them. And what I'll do is in post, we'll put these up so that the people that are watching can see them as we're talking about them. So the first one I'm looking at here on my off screen is it's actually, well, of course I picked this one first because it's called Painting for Patrick. Now, of course, not me. You did this far before we met, I assume, right?
Correct.
But it's inspired by someone named Patrick, I assume.
Yes. Yes. Patrick is the name of my painting mentor. He's someone I learned from for years over at Pittsburgh Center for the Arts. His name is Patrick Doherty. And his painting style is very different than mine. He does very realistic portraits.
Okay.
So way far off from my subject matter, but his approach to painting and learning about the physical properties of paint, he's the guy. He's been amazing.
Gotcha.
Person to me. So I painted this painting in his class, and he liked it, so I ended up giving it to him. Yeah.
So the painting, I can see what I feel like maybe in blue, kind of center off a little bit to the right, with maybe like a human figure, and then maybe an outline around that figure that maybe have like an open mouth. But that's what my mind, like
Sure.
That's the thing about abstract painting, is that we can put our mind is going to see things in there that may or may not be there. So for somebody who's new to like looking at these kinds of paintings, what's a good approach for them if they don't have like any training in like how to interpret? You walk into an art gallery and go, well, that I don't get it. Like what is there to get? How do you get it?
Right. Well, I think bottom line, people are going to have an immediate response to something they look at, and that you can't really control. However, if you get a little understanding about the artist or their intention, that might help. But for me, when I paint, it's not people always see things in my paintings, like they'll see birds or figures or different. It could be anything. They'll be like, oh, I see a red wagon with a brick on it, or, things that I didn't put there. And then, so for me, it's about the materials and the action of painting that brings joy. So, but visually, I'll see something and then I'll be like, you know what, this is pleasing to my eye as a painter. And I'll leave it at that. And then I like that it's open to other people. There was one woman who looked at that particular painting and she saw a big blue heart.
Yeah.
So I did, she actually is a poet, a Pittsburgh poet, Judy Robinson. And I did the book cover and she called it The Blue Heart, was the name of her book. And she'd like, that's what she saw. So I never intended anything. Like when I did those big circles, I was literally just putting the paint on and having so much fun doing it.
So I see a red heart in the bottom left, but so how big is that painting, do you think?
That one's one of my smaller ones. That's probably like a 16 by 20 inch, maybe
Okay.
18 by 24.
Poster size.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But people should, I guess, the images of abstract art can have an effect on someone's mood or just their aesthetic sense. So all art, I believe, is there to say, oh yeah, I like it or not. That's the beauty of art, is something that one person will love. Someone else might be like, oh, I can't even stand looking at that. And that's all right. That's why there's, I think, so many limitless expressions of art. But it is sometimes different once you study it, So I would say to someone who can't stand abstract art, maybe like look into it, learn a bit about it a little bit, and it might change.
Yeah, in fact, just recently I did an interview with a friend, and we talked about Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, and of course, at the end, there's a lot of experiential and artistic effects that he does with the camera, and with paints and emulsion and high intensity lighting and that sort of thing, and it's really open to interpretation, and so we gave ours, but like like the interviewee said, my friend Gern, he said, yeah, he said, the first time I saw it, I was like, well, I have absolutely no idea what this is. But now, after the 30th time he saw it, he's like, oh yeah, this is very straightforward, like he has a perfect like thesis and explanation for it. So it's not just that it's experiential once, it can change over time as well.
I agree. And there was a great book called The Making of Space Odyssey. Did you ever see that book?
That's in fact, I have it. He actually sent me a hard copy of that. And
it's a great book.
Yeah, and it's almost shaped like a monolith, actually.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So really, like learning about a process.
Yeah,
is really, really interesting.
So the second one you gave me is called Listen, and it's more of a red, white, and blue motif with some yellow as well. So do you find that do you have a connection towards certain colors and emotions or emotional states, or even like possibly intellectual ideas or concepts? Or is that something that you allow the viewer to lay over top of that?
I paint without intention. I really do. I don't, when I paint, I do have favorite colors. I do love yellow. Now, being a visually impaired person, I gravitate to high contrast. So I love seeing a really light color like white or yellow, or like some of them, just a brighter color on top of a darker color. So that's, since I can see it better. It doesn't mean, you know what I mean? So I paint I'm pretty selfish when I paint, because I'm painting for myself, because it's so joyous to me and fun. And, but I don't ever think like, oh, psychologically yellow makes people hungry. That's why McDonald's has yellow. Like,
right.
There is that psychology of color theory.
Right.
And like video gamer creators use that all the time to get certain effects. But I don't do that. Yeah, but there are artists that would, for sure, pick colors for symbolic reasons or some kind of emotional effect on a viewer, but not me.
I enjoy the dark colors, the light colors on top of dark colors too. The one behind me actually is a good example. But in fact, I used to do, I just do a lot of, I'm into astronomy, so I do a lot of starscapes and that sort of thing. I got to the point where I was using so much black pigment that my significant other, who's also an artist, she's actually trained as an artist. And she said, they make black gesso. And I was like, what? It like changed my life. I'm like, oh my God, that's going to save me so much money. She's like, yeah, they make black gesso. So oh, okay.
Funny.
So
I think you can, buy them already pre-manufactured that way too.
She said that too. Yeah. She's like, you can buy black canvas and stretch it yourself if you want, but it's just, so funny. Like cause I was such a novice. Well, still am probably, but so the last one that you sent me is actually won a award, right? It's called Environ Us.
Yeah. That it won an award at I think it was 2018. It might've been 2019. I forget now, but it was the 106th annual for the Associated Artists of Pittsburgh. And I was really excited to get an award, because that's kind of a hard show to even get into. So that, and that's a big one. That's 48 by 60 inches.
How do you get into a show? Like if there's an artist out there who's watching this, like, you mean you got into a show? How do you do that? Like, how does that happen?
Well, yeah, like a lot of the artist guilds around town, like Associated Artists, Pittsburgh Society of Artists, and other groups, they usually have like an open call for membership, and it's usually twice a year. So anyone can come and submit artwork to see if they can get into that group. And then once you're a member, there's a lot of exposure to different shows. Some are open to members and others are juried, and you have to like submit and then try to get in. But at least you'll be aware, you'll be kind of in the loop better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like you can become a member of Associated just by applying to their annual as a non-member. And if you get in, I think you also jury in as a member, but don't quote me on that exactly, because I'm
Okay. No,
Yeah,
but
no.
that's good to know that at least there, it sounds like there's a low cost point of entry for people who are not otherwise known to try to get known. So that's good to
Yep.
know.
Mhm.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, let's talk about Thoreau. So does Thoreau inspire your painting at all?
Yeah, not initially, but a lot of the themes that he explores, both as an essayist, a poet, and a naturalist, like his naturalistic writings, a lot of the things that come out in those readings, I'm like, oh my God, that's so in tune with how I feel about just existence or whatever. And so it comes through in my painting, without even trying. So, and then after I got really into Thoreau over the last maybe 2 decades. I initially learned about him in high school when I did a paper on an iconoclastic figure. We had to pick someone, and I was like, I don't even know what iconoclast means. So I asked my dad, and he told me about, someone who kind of goes against the grain and follows the beat of their own drum kind of thing. And that's one of his famous quotes.
Sure.
So I picked him because my dad threw the book at me. He's like, use this book, Walden. So that's what I did my paper on. And I got very intrigued from that point onward. And so a big part of, because he was so influential to me, I started thinking about his words. And so that environ us comes from a quote from Walden when he's talking about, so it's pretty, like all these transcendental notions. A lot of people are like, oh, that sounds so fluffy and out of,
Not really. I find Thoreau to be very practical.
Oh yeah.
I was intrigued that, as you said, I was exposed to it about 10th grade, 9th, 10th grade. And I just remember the one quote saying, I went to the woods to find what it had to teach and not find when I came to die that I had not actually lived. And I used that as a mantra for quite a long time. And I think I still have, even subconsciously, just to like try new things, get out there and look around, like just not to get stuck in one thing and one routine, and just to be open to the idea that nature itself, just going through my daily life, has lessons for me, has things for me.
Exactly. Yeah. He talks a lot about awakeness, like just being truly awake. And he critiqued a lot of the people in the, that his era, which was mid to late 19th century, of being like asleep, people who were just so caught up in their jobs and their properties and all of that, so it's very, very interesting. And especially his connection to nature is what I love the most. So a lot of my painting is organic, like I see a lot of organic forms in there. And so a lot of times after I'm done, I'm like, oh, you know what? This reminds me of something that Thoreau was talking about. And then I'll paint it,
Remember, yeah, Thoreau was, I think painting for me, and the other things I do, writing, all those kinds of things are very, well, they're type things that require concentration. For me, they usually require quiet or ambient music or something of that nature. Something I can, I can't do it while the TV is blaring, well, and or if there are a lot of people around. So the idea of solitude, the way Thoreau described it, there's no friend friendlier than solitude. I got into that at a very young. I've always been a reader, so it's hard to like for me to read and concentrate when there's a lot of activity going on. So I've often sought out places of solitude, often in nature, although also in society. I mean, reading rooms, libraries, that sort of thing. There was a reading room, at my university that was just unbelievable. It was as if they had put soundproofing in that room, because you could look out the windows and see the traffic, but you couldn't hear any of it. And it was so, there was such a dichotomy there. It was wonderful. But that kind of Thoreauian experience of just what, there was a phrase I heard the other day. It was a poet. It was Rumi. He said, when I'm quiet, everything I get to the place where everything is music.
Wow.
Yeah. And I thought, boy, that's Thoreau, like listen to the birds, listen to the insects.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. He has a whole chapter in Walden called Sounds. And it's amazing when you, like, I listen to it as an audiobook because of my vision, but there's almost a pattern to it's not him speaking, obviously, but to the person reading, it's just like a pattern to when he talks. And the whole chapter just kind of lulls you into this dreamlike state. It's really cool, even though they're just describing sounds, So it's very cool. But in the meantime, when I paint to very loud music.
Do you?
Almost always, yeah. I have an old vinyl collection, and I like to go through that, and I have favorites, that I play that get me pumped up to paint. So
that's cool. I used to do that too. I would paint. I always liked acrylic because I could get a painting done in one session.
Yeah.
Oils just took too long to dry for me, and there was too much cleanup, and I didn't want to deal with that.
Yeah. So, I'm a acrylic person too.
So instead do you use an easel? Do you paint with the canvas upright?
Yeah, either an easel or the wall.
Yeah, I lay mine flat on a table. I paint horizontally, so I'll put it on my dining room table and I'll paint like that. Or I have a table on my front porch and I'll paint there. But I find it easier for me to do it that way. So
yeah, I switch around. Sometimes I'll put it on the floor. If I'm using like spray paint or something, it's easier for the angle of the spraying to not have to like have my arm at a right angle, like my wrist, trying to spray something.
Yep.
So I'll do a lot of stuff on the floor too.
And drips too.
Oh, fun. Yeah.
So yeah, you can put a paint where you want to. And so what about, so how many paintbrushes are you thinking you have in your house?
Oh my God. Oh, probably like 90 to 100.
There's probably thousands in this house. It's like
there might be more. I should count them someday.
It's silly how many we have, And then Tara, my significant other, she teaches as well. So, she'll say, "Oh, well, I left those brushes." I'm like, "That's fine. Just leave them. Just leave them. Spread the wealth." Like just
that's
one less object in the house. Just go ahead. Get rid of it. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've just acquired them also, like from when my son was little. Like the little cheapy brushes are great sometimes for certain purposes. So you don't have to spend an arm and a leg to get a night, to do, especially with acrylic. You don't need expensive brushes.
Sometimes those like cheap plastic brushes, they sometimes you want a fresh brush, and sometimes you want something super stiff. And those really classy horsehair brushes, they don't have that quality. So sometimes the artificial hairs are more effective, especially if I'm doing something where I'm trying to do an edge, something. I don't know. It just depends.
No, you're right. Yeah, I prefer them. Now, if I'm doing watercolor or something, those fancier brushes do serve a great purpose, but
sure.
So I'm not really doing that kind of work.
So you're also a dog lover, and somewhat of necessity, but you'd be a dog lover anyway, I suspect.
Oh yeah, but I have to say my newly found love of dogs has been as an adult, and I had my first guide dog. So I got to learn all about dogs as a responsible person. Just, I would say that was 2012 when I got my first guide dog. So prior to that, I grew up with dogs, but I never had to take care of them or anything. I was just, part of the family, and they were around, and I loved them. But this is different. I've learned so much about these dogs. I also, so I have 3 dogs right now, a retired guide, my current guide dog, both are yellow labs. And then I have a 9-year-old Havanese, who's like 9 pounds. So he's real little, but they're great. I mean, I can't get enough of these dogs. And I said, I'm always like, can we get another one? My husband's like, absolutely not. So we're at the limit right now. 3 is a good number.
Every golden lab I've ever encountered had such a friendly, just calm, wonderful personality. Every single one. I don't know. Is that a quality of the breed, or am I just generalizing?
No, I think it can be, especially of the older ones. The puppies can be totally crazy. Like Petals is my current guide dog. She's 2, and she still has a lot of energy and a lot of mischief. So that can be a little much, because they can be really pushy, So I trip on her a lot. She hasn't, like my other guide dog, if she sees me coming, she gets up and moves. She knows I'm visually impaired. She knows she will get stepped on. But Petals hasn't learned that yet. So it's hilarious.
And that's Petals is a relatively recent addition to your family, right?
Yeah, since March, end of March.
That's probably not enough time for her to learn.
Yeah, she'll learn.
Yeah, she'll get there. Yeah,
but they're great.
So is there a pecking order? I mean, most packs have an order, a hierarchy. Is there a hierarchy among your 3 dogs? Or is that, am I making a false assumption there?
No, I do think, well, it's kind of interesting. I think there is, like the 2 labs, I feel like the younger dog intuitively knows that the other dog is older, and she seems to kind of like surrender to her, like to go up the steps first, to do everything first. It's really interesting, because you'd think like, I did actually notice that. I was like, that's really interesting. And it could be too, because Haven had established territory at my house before this new dog came on the scene. And she was like, where am I? So she probably by default was like, oh, this isn't my territory. None of my smells are here, And then the other dog, I think, lives in his own little microcosm. He really does. He just spins on his own little orbit, and he doesn't really interact with the other dogs. He's kind of like my little shadow. He likes to stick with me.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but he doesn't seem to consider hierarchy whatsoever.
There's no hierarchy.
No.
Knows where the food comes from, so just sticks close to the food.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He doesn't mess with those silly labs. He's like, yeah, he'll get trampled though. He will.
So, do you have any shows coming up? Do you have anything? I saw an opening, actually, the opening that I went to, that was that you were hanging 2 canvases in. That was like my first get out of the house event in a long time. Here. So I was very excited, and I was really excited to see you in person and to see your work up close. And
thanks. That was really fun to meet you for the first time in person there. Yeah,
it was a great day. It was a beautiful day, and it was just everybody was so cheery, and it was just a wonderful crowd, and it's just a really great place to be, except for the lady that fell on the floor and then remained on the floor the whole time. I don't know.
Yeah, she's okay now, by the way.
Good. She looked like she was okay while she was resting on the floor, but I just it was nice that she didn't feel too embarrassed.
She wrote something recently, because there was an emails going back and forth with all the Group A members, and she said I apologize for my dramatic exit from the opening.
That's hilarious.
I thought that was a good choice of words. It was
She did
funny.
that with aplomb and style.
Yeah. Yes, she did. Yeah. Yeah, but that was a fun opening.
So do you have anything coming up?
Well, I don't have any shows per se. I'm applying to some juried exhibitions that will be coming up. But I do have a couple like art demo things coming up. One is at the School for the Blind. They're having a big like professional development day for staff and families. And so I'll be doing an in-person painting demonstration for people with vision impairments. So
great. So you sell your work? You make a living at it?
I don't know if I'd go as far as say I make a living at it.
Okay.
But because then, I can't rely on it for most of my basic needs.
It's not steady income.
Right. It's not steady, but
irregular.
It's irregular, but I don't really, I should work at it harder, but with marketing and things like that. But I mostly word of mouth. And so I have a small following of people on like a corporate level. And then I have a larger following of people who just have by word of mouth have gotten familiar with my work. And then sometimes they'll commission me, and other times they'll like something that I already have existing. And then
so
sales that way.
If somebody's watching this now and they wanted to look at your work or buy something, is there any way they could get they could find that like online?
Sure. I can share this with you after.
Yeah, we'll put it in the description.
Yeah, because I have a website, www.inwardmorning.com, which is a Thoreau quote.
There you go.
A poem he did entitled Inward Morning. And then, which I love that word, those two words together. And then also Pittsburgh Artist Registry.com, which is a registry of all the artists in Pittsburgh. They can look me up there, or any of the websites of the guilds, the Associated Artists of Pittsburgh.
We'll put as many of those links as we can in the description.
Yeah, I can.
That'd be great.
The Artist Registry is probably like the main hub that will get you where you want to go.
When you get commissioned, when someone calls you and commissions you, do you find that restrictive? Do you find that like people are like, well, I want this, or do they just kind of like give you carte blanche and say, look, I want something this size, do it in the style that you always do it? What do you
I get both requests.
You get both?
Yeah, and my preference, it's really hard for me. Like if someone said, I want, I knew that doorbell was going to ring. Didn't I tell you?
You want me to pause?
Sure.
I'll pause the record. All right. So after you answered the door, before you answered the door, we were talking about commission styles. And you said that, you had a preference for one style over another, or you get both?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to paint per someone else's specifications. But if usually no one who sees my art is going to want like a realistic portrait of George Washington or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're going to say, oh, in your style, can we do X, Y, Z? So I've done both. I think I anguish over commissions more than the ones that give me kind of more free reign to interpret something for someone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd much rather work intuitively and spontaneously rather than like have a set outcome already in mind. That's really tough.
No, I agree. And we do a lot of pottery, my girlfriend and I. So, and it's funny because people will say, oh, well, we're going to commission you. Well, we'd like to have, 30 identical beer steins, blah, blah. And it's like, go to Pottery Barn. Like that's, sorry, exactly. But like, if that's what you want, like, cause no two pieces are going to be, she's great. Like she was trained as a ceramic artist, so she can do that like a machine. Yeah. But is that what you really want? Do you really want that? You can go to Target and get the same identical plates, all the same, same pattern. Why not have something unique that nobody else has ever made before?
I agree.
I don't know, but that's just me. But like, so I know she bristles against that sometimes a lot. And
Mhm.
and we've passed up commissions because of that. But
Yeah.
I'm the same way. Like I'd rather create the art without any intent of
Mhm.
sale. And then if somebody happens across it and goes, "Oh, I really like that.
Yeah.
Make me
Yeah.
an offer," I don't
Yeah,
even have
that's
a price in mind when I make stuff. Like I just don't even know how to price my own work.
right.
Just like,
Yeah, that's also another whole, that could be a whole nother topic of discussion. It's really a weird world, the art world in terms of
yeah,
price.
yeah,
Because I've been told by my mentor, you need to up the value of your paintings
right.
because of XYZ. And I'm like, well, these are my friends that are buying my work. I don't want them, they can't afford that, that kind of thing. And it just seems, but then there's this unspoken thing in the art world that if you price too low, it devalues your work. If you price too high, it does,
I told,
so
yeah,
if
I
if
told
you
Tara
don't
the
have,
same thing. It's like, it's, you can't just give this stuff away. And she's like, yeah, I can, it's mine. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But, but if you want, if you ever want
exactly.
to, so I guess we're never going to break into that. Like,
It's
but
tough.
you're right.
I never charge my friends. I always
I know.
give a lot of stuff away because that's
Yeah.
the truth of it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. I mean, I think, part of the, part of being an artist is that we feel like we have something within ourselves that we want to share. And, and so that innate, um, um, largesse, that innate, willingness
Hmm.
to give is just part, it's just part of the emotion of creating.
I
What's the point of
agree.
creating? What's the point of me creating something and then put it in my closet? It just
Right.
doesn't
Right.
make any sense to me.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting balance because I do want to support artists who are trying to make a living
mhm.
because it's really tough out there.
Oh my gosh.
It's so tough. So it's like whatever you can do. Like if I can buy a painting from a friend, I do it.
Mhm.
But kind of on the sly, So if I ask them and say, "Oh, I really am in love with that piece," they might feel a little pressure to be like, "Oh, well, I'll give you a good deal on it."
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
I'd rather just
yeah.
not. I'd rather just let them reap the benefit in the gallery, their portion, etc. So
Sure, if possible, absolutely.
if you can do it, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, we don't walk around with $1,000 bills in our pocket.
Oh no,
I'll take
no.
that one. I'll take that one. I'll take that one. Wrap them
It
up.
is an
There you
expensive hobby. Yeah.
go. Mhm. So have you ever done any portraiture or anything realistic?
Yeah. Yeah. I especially before my vision loss.
Mm-hmm.
I was a medical illustrator, actually. I'm published as a medical illustrator doing pen and ink drawings of like hernia repair and things like that. So
Wow, that's great.
um yeah, so I was very, very meticulously realistic. And my training is with classical life drawing classes through the Carnegie Museum and different places in Pittsburgh, and then at the Art Institute of Pittsburgh as well. So I learned very realistic figure drawing. So I do have a lot, and that has spilled over into my abstract work. I mean, I'll often start an abstract. I'm just having fun throwing paint around. Then I'm like, oh my God, that's a man's back and shoulder, and I can see his ear. All of a sudden, this form comes through the paint.
Mm,
So then I will just kind of, sometimes I'll highlight that. And then it turns into what I call my figurative abstracts.
gotcha.
Which I have a whole page on my website that's just on figures and abstract painting. So, and then the combination. So yeah, so I definitely can do that. I did a portrait of my son for his 16th birthday.
Cool.
And so I will do stuff like that on occasion.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, nothing left to do but smile, smile, smile. So what
I love
what do you, anyway, if you get that reference, put it in the comments below. So is there anything else you'd like to talk about today?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, I just really enjoy your like joie de vivre because
Oh,
it's contagious. You really all the work you've done that I've seen, which is, I'm just at the beginning of knowing about your podcast and stuff, but I think they're really great. And so thank you for like thinking of me to want to interview me. That was really a surprise. And so I enjoyed that. And I don't know, I think this is just really fun and really looking at the positive things, because there's so much else we could be focusing our attentions on. And I'm
right.
just glad that this is uplifting. It's kind of interesting. It's fun. And that's all I hope to, share with people through my art too. It's just that kind of more positive feelings.
I was
So,
just gonna say, just like your abstract art, you're reading into what, but you're also reflecting what you have inside of you as well, because I've recognized that in you as well. I recognize the kindred spirit in the universe at the same time, because
and
you have
we're
that,
like almost the exact same age. So,
yeah, and similar influences, and some that
Mhm.
I only discovered through this interview. So that's exactly the type of the creative process. This is the way the universe works. It puts people together, and this is one way for people to do that. And for people that are watching, it's a way for them to participate as well. So hopefully we get this out there and a lot of people enjoy it, because that's exactly what these are all about. It's all about,
Yeah.
enjoying, laughing, having fun, and learning a little bit maybe on the way, but just, expressing, our joy of being alive. So,
Correct. Yeah, I agree. And I hope that if anyone out there is watching that's visually impaired
mhm,
or blind,
mhm.
I really would encourage them to play around with some art materials, because there's no reason visual art has to be limited to to artists who can see well.
I
So,
totally agree.
yeah,
Ceramics lends itself well to that. It's
exactly.
very touch oriented. It's very much, it would be very much a medium for someone who were having difficulty with their sight. And
Hmm.
I've always had bad vision myself. I'm not on the level you are, but it's always a possibility. So yeah, it's important to have creative outlets no matter what happens. So
Exactly. Yep.
mhm. Good. All right, great. Well, it's been a wonderful time talking to you. And
Yes. Thank you for having me.
all right. And everybody out there, smash like for us. That helps send the algorithm to the roof. And everybody gets to watch us and see if you can do something nice for somebody today without getting caught.